emergency item, which signaled to the legislature the urgency of the need and encouraged swift action. The bills that passed as a result created the first broadband office and our first long-term state broadband plan, two critical steps in closing the digital divide. Having a full-time broadband office and a long-term plan ensures the best use of resources and dedication to expanded broadband infrastructure. And with the expansion of broadband comes great economic gains. We are fueling jobs, education, civic engagement, access to health care, and so much more. So thank you, Governor Abbott, for your vision and continued leadership on this important issue. And we are proud to present the original Broadband Trailblazer Award.
Thank you very much. Well, let me start out in the order in which they spoke. I want to thank Gene and his leadership at the Laredo Economic Development Corporation. One thing that Texas does extraordinarily well is economic development, and we work with local economic development corporations like the one in Laredo. I was here last year working with them for the grand opening of Mission Produce, and we're working with them on projects as we speak right now to make sure that the greater Laredo area continues to grow and expand its economy. Also want to thank Darren Schauer of the Guadalupe Valley Electric Cooperative. Those rural electric cooperatives are central to what our goal is in expanding broadband access. There are underserved areas in places like Laredo, but the rural areas in particular are, let's say, obviously underserved. And so we are working with these rural co-ops as well as other rural organizations to make sure we are delivering broadband to every sector across the state. And I want to thank Leslie Ward with AT&T. AT&T is at the tip of the spear of delivering that broadband quite literally to homes, to businesses, to people who live on farms and ranches. And I want to thank our host here today, Mile 1 and Texas Broadband Now. This is an iconic, innovative location that's showing what can be done with regard to the next generation. More specifically in that regard, Laredo and places like this represent the future of business. Mile 1 incubates the businesses of tomorrow. Dreamers, doers, and trendsetters have created more than 100 new businesses here in the Laredo area. And they use technologies like lightning-fast broadband from AT&T to literally change the world. Broadband is a tool that is essential in today's world. It's essential for businesses to be able to compete against one another. It's also essential for businesses to be able to reach their customers or stay connected with their suppliers. It's essential for education, whether you're a college student or an elementary school student. There are instances where students need online access more and more, whether it be homework, lesson plans, or actually attending school for a particular day. It's also important to expand broadband for purposes of access to health care as well as mental health services, no matter where a person lives. Along those lines, I want to tell you about something that shows what we have begun to achieve in the state of Texas. Advancements like telemedicine make health care easier and cheaper for people across the state to be able to access. Two quick examples. I was in Greenville, Texas, which is where Hunt County, Texas is located, at the Hunt Regional Medical Center, where they have provided now more than 24,000 patient visits through telemedicine. It shows how easy it is for patients to be able to access health care wherever they may be through broadband-provided telemedicine. Similarly, I talked with doctors in the world's largest medical center, which is located in Houston, Texas. And they have the capability of providing telemedicine to some of the most remote places along the border. Well, going back, AT&T and Mile 1 are part of the economic juggernaut we have in Texas, as well as the Laredo Economic Development Corporation. Texas is ranked #1 in the United States by CEOs as the best state for doing business. Texas has won the Governor's Cup every year that I've been governor. The Governor's Cup goes to the state that ranks #1 in the nation for new economic development projects. Texas leads the country for exports now for 20 years in a row. That's important for the entire state, but Laredo is the largest inland import-export location in the United States of America and perhaps in the entire world. And so what Laredo does for exports is essential to Texas's ranking as #1 in the United States for exports. And as of this past May, Texas is now home to more Fortune 500 headquarters than any other state in the United States. Now, things like that may involve big businesses, but we know this. 90% of all businesses in the state are small businesses, and they employ more than half of all Texans. So I'm proud to tell you that Texas also ranks #1 in the United States as the #1 state to start a small business. Well, all of this adds up to something that's very powerful that was a word that came up in our meeting moments ago repeatedly, and that is more jobs. Over the past 4 years, Texas has added far more jobs than any other state in the United States. More importantly, however, there are more Texans who are receiving a paycheck today than ever before in the history of our state. One thing all of this success adds up to, it adds up to an economy that is performing better than our state economy has ever performed. As we gather today, the state of Texas has a budget surplus of $27 billion. So what should we do with that $27 billion this next session? Well, part of it we'll use to help our schools. Part of it we'll use to provide better health care. Part of it we'll use to build out the infrastructure that our communities need. But understanding that that money really belongs to the taxpayers of the state of Texas, I propose that we give back at least half of it to the taxpayers for the largest property tax cut in the history of the state of Texas. Now, broadband business is so important to our future. I made it an emergency item in this last session. When the governor makes something an emergency item, that means it's a must-pass piece of legislation. And I'm proud of the legislature for passing this must-pass bill. And I signed a law that is the biggest broadband expansion ever in the state of Texas. We created the Broadband Development Office to prepare a Texas broadband plan. And we provided $500 million to begin the build-out of the Texas broadband infrastructure. We also created the Governor's Broadband Development Council to monitor the progress, to remove barriers, as well as to ensure statewide access for broadband. So the bottom line is no matter what corner of the state of Texas you may live in, you will have access to fast, reliable internet so that students will more easily be able to learn on the internet. So businesses will better be able to thrive, and so that you will be able to visit a doctor from the comfort of your own home. So thanks again to AT&T, to the Laredo Economic Development Corporation, to Texas Broadband Now, to Mile One for investing in Texas and all of its great people. The future of business in Texas is online. And in Texas, we are now bringing that future to absolutely everyone. With that, we'll be happy to take a few questions.